So thank you for doing this.
I'm going to pour me some wines before.
Yeah, please. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking probably the best Pinot Noir from Alsace. Jean-François Galouchey.
Ah, yeah.
Pinot Noir, it's absolutely astonishing. That's the 18 vintage, which was a pretty tough vintage in Alsace, mostly for the natural producer. Most of them have like huge high VA and things like that. But that wine it's very, very rare that I'm drinking a bottle by myself. But tonight, it's snowing, very cold. And so I said, okay, I need to open something.
It's funny that you say that because I recently spoke with Raj about a producer from Styria.
Yeah.
And his 17s were off the charts and his 18s are completely effed up.
It's, mostly for, I think there's tons of reason for it. But one of them, it's really, I don't know, in Austria, you'll know way better than I do. But everywhere in France, even for us in Bordeaux, the alcoholic fermentation were never as long as this. Period. Like Burgundy, Alsace, Bordeaux, it took forever to finish the fermentation. And when you have really, really long fermentation, and sometimes mostly when you're in Alsace, in like sort of cooler climate and things like that. Sometimes I was there not long ago, and a lot of people they were saying, yeah, but the fermentation, alcoholic fermentation stopped. And it started back again like 1 month after. I said, okay, that's like in all the books of oenology, that's one of the like most, how can I say that in English, the scariest thing to do in terms of oenology. For them, it didn't seem to be a problem, but I think when you analyze all this, I think the really high VA and the little wacky little bit of flavor, I think this is for one of the reasons.
Yeah. No, it was really interesting because again, if 1 year is such a standout and the next one is just where I say, holy mackerel, what happened here?
Yeah, but this is the thing, but a little bit reversed because the 2019 in Alsace, it's crushing it.
Yeah.
It's absolutely phenomenal.
19, same thing, full backhand. Yeah. But I think this is on these natural winemakers, if you do just this minimal vineyard work, obviously you exposed much more to kind of vintage variation and these troubles which you got with it.
Yeah, of course. And if you talk about long fermentation, of course, when you're in Alsace and you go in all the big houses and things like that, they all put like very active yeast.
Yeah.
Everything is done in 1 week. So of course, and after that you put some sulfur and you're okay for 12 months, 18 months. So it's a completely whole different, it's a taking of risk, which is more important. But at the end, honestly, when you taste that wine, sorry, you're not with me tonight, but that's a absolutely like phenomenal wine for a very hard vintage. Mm-hmm. So that's why, the natural wine can be amongst probably the best in the world. They can be a little less inconsistent for many reasons. Sometimes vintage winemakers, because not everyone are good winemakers. Plus one thing in the media, we don't talk enough, and I would love to see more article on this, which you guys are doing, what I'm doing. It's to conserve well the wine. Because the problem, if you came in Paris, you guys know more than I do. And when you go in a natural wine bar and the wines are above the coffee machine at 36 degrees Celsius in the summer for even if it's like 1 month, it's done. But the problem there's always every day these fights with classic, conventionnel and natural. And I think we should stop doing this and go more digging in terms of good reason why sometimes we have so much disappointing with these wines. But anyways, that's a whole different subject,
Yeah. Tell us about Galouchey. What made you start making wine in Bordeaux?
You want from the beginning?
Well, like a little bit, just a couple of things, because obviously you're a sommelier and you're quite a renowned sommelier. You trained many young sommeliers, most prominent Pass. Yeah. But no. But it's just what made you go into wine, making wine.
In the wine, as you said, I was in the wine business. I'm still am, but even if I'm doing more plumbing, electricity, and accounting at the moment more than sommelier. But you know, I'm still a little bit in the wine business, and that was a few years ago. That was grossly in 2005, 2006. My two partners in Galouchey are today 82-year-old each, not combined together, each. And you know, in 2005, I was very close to Gérard Pantanach, which is one of the two major partners at the beginning in Galouchet. He used to own a wine bar, Le Café du Passage, Rue de Charonne, in the 11th district. And I was going there like every Friday after our service at Taïwan. We used to go blind tasting until like 6 o'clock in the morning with a bunch of sommeliers and client over there. And the owner of that wine bar, Gérard, so he said, oh, okay, I'm going in my vineyard, blah, 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 blah. And you know, I said, oh, can I go for a weekend? And I was going there like for pruning, things like that, just to start like to know a little bit. The original of the story, it's they decided one day they were drunk in 2002. They were drunk, and one of the two partners bought that house. It was like a summer house, which it used to be a farm courtyard, and there was 1 hectare of a vineyard in front of the house, which never had any vineyard, only like goats, horses, and animals and things like that. So pretty fertile soil, which we don't necessarily always need in the wine. So that's why we needed to paste the vineyard at the beginning, because it was very fertile. But one day in 2002, when they were drunk, they said, okay, we're in the land of the wine making, so we need to go plant some vine. And they decided to go, and the next day they went to the pépiniéries, the nursery,
Yep.
the nursery to buy some plant. And the guy said, you know, you're not allowed to plant vine like that in France, you know? I said, no worry. Okay, we'll pay cash. And they planted the vine. After that, you know, it started to grow. They were going during the night to put some water on the vine, because, you know, you're not allowed to irrigate it in France. So they were like putting a little bit of water on the young vine, because, you know, they didn't have the knowledge of everything. And
So what you're not allowed during the day, you do at night.
Exactly. Otherwise, you know, in France, you know, it's maybe different than the US, but you know, you better go in the night, otherwise people can talk or call whatever police or whatever. And you know, and this is why they were like pretty close friend with one of the neighbor, which the Charles-Henri Gonnet from Champagne Michel Gonnet, because they own a little chateau over there, Chateau L'Espard, and they were our neighbor. And you know, in 2005, the year I started to work with them, they said, okay, it's dangerous, because, you know, a lot of people are coming, people are seeing that there's some vine, and Charles-Henri already have some droit de plantation, right of plantation. And they said, okay, we're going to do something. There was like a little custom guy that was going in retirement, so they paid him some drinks and some booze one night. And it's okay, we're going to do like a sort of contract, like we were renting the land to the neighbor, and now he's not able to do it, and we will rebuy our land for €1, symbolic euro. So that's why we were able to have the right of plantation over there. So that's a pretty fun story. And in 2005, 2006, you know, I was there with them, just like helping them to do things. And in 2008, you know, the worst enemy of the wine is hair. So they left one tank open, and everything turns into a vinegar. So that's why you'll never see some Domaine de Galouchet 2008, because they sacrificed everything. And I was there, and I was yelling. I said, hey guys, I'm always telling you to be careful of this, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, if you think you're smarter than us, okay, come with us officially, and you'll show what you're able to do. So 2009 vintage, it was our first vintage together. And with, of course, the knowledge we had, not in the vineyard, but with the people that from in the region. So we started to ask a lot of questions. I brought them to see Jean-Marie Bouldy in Belgrave, which is one of the pioneers in biodynamic organic farming over there. So we started to learn because we're still learning a lot. And we started to learn all the major basics and things like that. We knew exactly what type of wine we wanted to do. At the beginning, it was a wine made only for France. But after that, you know, bringing some wine at the Bristol, and you have the neighbor, you have the other one, you have a caviste. Everyone started to want to have the wine. Some friends from New York, and they wanted to have some wines. And after that, say, okay, we're gonna do a business out of it, even if we will not win a lot of money, but at least if we're able to pay everything to be able to reinvest just a little bit in the vineyard and have like a fresh barrel once in a while, not new barrel, but once in a while, that's going to be enough. And so that's why we started to do like that. 09, 10, 11, pretty easy vintage to start because, good vintage, not any problem in the vineyard in terms of weather and things like that. So we thought we were the champion because we know how to make wine. The wine are great. But when arrived 2012, 2013, that was a different story because lots of rain, a lot of moisture, a lot of humidity. And, and every day you learn. This is what is great about making wine because, it's a lessons of humility. For us, when it was raining, because, in the organic farming, you do the treatment when the rain is announced. Okay, you don't spread every 2 weeks systematically because the major difference for the people to understand, it's the treatment in the vine, organic versus conventionnel. Is conventionnel, it's penetrated in the vine, mm-hmm. And the biodynamic and bio product are just surfaces, which is washed after the rain, which is different. So every time you need to go back. So sometimes you can go 6 or 7 times during a campaign, and sometimes 17, 20 times. But for us, we were not very intelligent about winemaking. So we were saying, okay, the rain is coming, it's going to be humid, so we're going to go treat. This is not how it goes. So you need to treat before the rain. But when you don't know, and it's your first thing, so that's why we sacrificed 2012, 2013. It was very, very tough for us in terms of quantity. On the whole clusters of grape clusters, there was maybe like 20 grapes non-touched by the gray rock. So since we are destamping by hand, it was a huge job. But it allowed us to understand what we wanted to do. And this is where this is where you see that when you do hard work in the vineyard at the beginning and during the harvest, doing the triage, this is where you see the difference between a great vintage or a normal classic vintage and a very tough vintage, where you're able to do a very classic, good, precise wine on tough vintage. It means that you did your job. Maybe you forgot 2 things, but.
Can you explain us a little bit more where Galouchey is located?
Okay, if you take the whole region of Bordeaux, so major, there's 3 major regions. You have the Haut-Médoc, Médoc and Haut-Médoc, which is on the left bank of the Gironde and Dordogne. On the southern part of Bordeaux, you have what we call les Graves Pessac-Léognan. That's another main region, which is mostly Cabernet Sauvignon, as well as the Médoc and Haut-Médoc. And on the right bank, when we talk in the wine business, we say rive droite, rive gauche. So on the right bank of the Garonne and Dordogne, you have the Libournais and l'Entre-deux-Mers. Entre-deux-Mers, it's a prolongation. So Libourne, it's one of the major cities over there, Libourne. And if you take a map and you see the main road between Bordeaux and Libourne, so it's a straight line, and we are 7 kilometers before Libourne. So on the southwest of Libourne, and if you go on the northeast of Libourne, you have Saint-Émilion and Pomerol. So flight distance, we are around like 20 kilometers from Saint-Émilion and Pomerol, but on the wrong side in terms of quality, but on the good side in terms of paying the land. So that's a different thing. Okay, I'm just sharing quickly the screen. Do you see it, right? It would be somewhere here, no? Yeah, Arvers, just Saint-Germain-du-Puy and Béchac-et-Caillaux to your left. Okay, perfect. We are right between Saint-Germain-du-Puy and Béchac-et-Caillaux, right between both. Exactly, over there, right over there where you see the crossing of the 2 lines. Okay, perfect. Excellent. So it would be somewhere here, no? Sorry? It would be somewhere here, no? I'm sorry, I didn't understand. It would be in this area, right? Do you see the screen? Yeah, exactly. Béchac-et-Caillaux and Saint-Germain-du-Puy. If you see Route de Béchac, you have over there. Yeah, it's right between Route des Fossés and Pays-Bas, where you say Pays-Bas on the other side.
Okay, cool.
So this is, and Galouchey, the name of Galouchey, it's a name, one of the little rivers you see on your map. It's one of the little rivers, so that's why we call it the Domaine de Galouchet. And this is why also sometimes you can also mix up a little bit, because there's many Galouchets. You have Château au Galouchet, you have Domaine de Galouchet, you have Château Galouchet. So there's many because of that little river, that little affluent. So that's why there's many different Galouchets in the region.
So Bordeaux has in the United States always a little bit, or among the common consumer, has kind of this image. Bordeaux stands for, Haut-Briand stands for Petrus, stands for Mouton, Margaux, and all the top chateaus. But nowadays, we see more and more these little chateaus, but they almost far more like Burgundians.
Yep, definitely, and you're totally right. And there's many reasons to this. First of all, there's something we need to say, which is important for people to understand why the great brand of Bordeaux are so much well known. First of all, Napoleon created the classification of 1855 in view of the Exposition Internationale, blah, 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 blah. And everything was mostly created because with the cours du vin, the prices of each wine back then. So that's why we have to be careful of the hierarchy of the wine. It's not completely like sclerosé. When you see a wine like Lynch-Bache today, it should have been at least a second or a third. Mm-hmm. But that's only my opinion. But there's some things like that. Even if most of these wine, if they were sold more expensive back then, that was for a reason. It's in adequation with the quality. So that's one of the things. So that was one of the first classification before the AOC creation, which was mostly in 1936. So that was already an advantage for them. And one of the things we need to understand now, all the budget that goes since many years from Europe, and even way back then from France. Most of the budget from the States to promote the vineyard, 98% were going to the classified growth, not us. It's because, everything in France have to be complicated. So when you want to have a financement of budget, you need to fill tons and tons of papers, which when you own 1.5 hectares or 2 hectares, it's not your job. Your job is to be in the vineyard. But when you're a big shot and you have an accountant, you have a financial, you have a thing like that. So that's why the system was not created to help the small vineyard like us. Now it's different because 20, 30 years ago the wine was not selling like today. Today all the young winemakers that in the middle of Loire, they classify in Vin France or in the Jura and everywhere. You have so much ambassador like you guys, us in the restaurant, that leaving a little bit the big brand and trying to trust our own palate, our own and to promote this wine, even if they don't have that super appellation, doesn't have a great notoriety or something like that. So we are able to defend this wine, and more, one of the great advantage in Bordeaux. I'm not here to over promote our region, but definitely in terms of the good terroir, Bordeaux, it's one of the last places in France where you can invest in good land, young winemakers that want to do organic farming, which is not easy because it's an oceanic climate. It's not a continental climate. So you have a little bit more of entrée maritime, a little bit more humidity, but it's possible. If you're there, if you're careful, it's completely possible to do it if you don't do the same mistake that we were doing. But you're able to do it. And for example, an hectare where we are in Béchac et Caillot today, it's 15,000 euro. It's not a crazy thing. So of course, you need to check up on your vegetal matériel. You need to replant maybe a few things and things like that. But 15,000 euros for a young guy or girl that comes in a vineyard, they want to invest, they want to start to create something. It's completely possible. So this is why Bordeaux start, but we still have that problem of financement from the States because it's still the same that it used to be. but more and more people, since when you're able to do it, you're able to sell your wine. It's not like 20 years ago, when you were Bordeaux Générique, it was very, very hard to sell your wine. But if you're able to survive for 2 or 3 years, you're okay. Because of course, when you go harvesting by hand, you do everything organic. At the beginning, it's way more expensive. But if you start to be just a little bit known, you're able to sell your wine, because the cours du vin today, it's not even €2 the liter in the Bordeaux Générique. Can you imagine? So that's why the states today give what we call, I don't know what's the word in English, but they give today some prime d'arrachage. So people in Bordeaux now, they unroot more vine at the plant, because they get money for subsidies for it.
Yeah.
So which is maybe a good thing for the quality in long term, but it's crazy where we are at the moment by saying that by the industrialisation of the wine, harvesting by machine,
overcropping.
Overcropping, but the fertilizers that we put to produce more and things like that, the wines were completely unbalanced and not interesting at all. One of our neighbors came to see me the other day. He said, Marco, you're able to sell your wine. I see you're selling it over there. He brought me 10 samples from his wine. He said, what can you do with that for making it sellable? I said, your decision would have to be 2 years ago on the pruning on your vine. It's not a miracle. I'm not like a master blender and I'm doing great. The only thing we're doing, it's put the best grape we have in the tank, and that's it. And this is why it's a little bit crazy. And we still have, we are still a little bit in the mind over there that the bigger is better. More you have flesh, more you have structure. When people taste our wine, they said, "Oh, that's very light. It doesn't have a lot of tannin." It does, yeah, but you want to open a second bottle. This is a different thing. If you take a wine, it can have all the best scores you have in the world. If it's like a gold bar in your cellar and you don't want to open it, and even if you don't want to, you don't feel like drinking it, it's useless. I prefer selling my wine less expensive. One of the greatest winemakers on the planet told me one day, he said, Marco, if you ever do wine one day, do the wine you want to drink, because if you're not allowed to sell it, you'll have to drink it. That was Henri Jaillère. And this is, wine, we never have to forget that wine, before everything, it's a beverages. You need to refresh you. If it's, and I think since few years, we are a little forget about that. It used to be a peasant drink, noble King's drink. The notoriety was different, but it was a peasant wine. The water was not drinkable. They used to put wine to sterilize the water. So that was the whole different thing. And I think sometimes always to continue in the best, more defined identity, always the quest of authenticity in the identity, but to never forget that it's a beverage and we need to drink.
So Galouchey, what do you do in vinification differently?
Nothing. It depends. The only thing we do different is we don't do anything. We harvest by hand. We distemp most of it by hand. Now I'm saying most of it because we were able to find this year one it's a sort of little distemper with a optical tree and things like that. And distemping by hand, it's very long, so that's why we tried, and the result was very good. So we'll see in the future, but most of it is distemped by hand. The whole grape in the tank. That's it. No fourage. Tank in it. Beginning of fermentation in the grapes, and the fermentation make explode the grape. Now you have some juice, but we have to be careful because when you have more marc at the beginning than juice, we have to be careful for the VA. So the little juice we have in the bottom of the tank. So we just pump 1 or 2 times every day just to not dry the chapeau, the head of the marc. That's it. Just to make sure that we prevent from VA, and more everything start to push down and everything crush. So no pigeage, no extraction. So that's why at Galouchey we use everything. We don't, because usually in Bordeaux would say many things to say about this, but
I was waiting.
in Bordeaux, what we have to understand, it's most of the chateau today, they do the wines, they do the pigeage and everything. And when they soutirage, when they soutirage the tank, you have the marc. Okay,
Yep.
usually you do the press after that. The little juice that you still have in the grape, you press. And usually, if you take a whole bottle of wine, at the end, you have maximum 7% of vin de presse in it. You can go for 8, 9 or something, but the big average, it's 7% of vin de presse. Because the little you have practically nothing. So it can be green, it can be harsh tannin. For us, we use everything because when we soutirer la cuve and we do the press, there's only like jus de goutte in it. So we do very light press to just extract the pure juice you have in it, and that's it.
You have pneumatic press, or what press do you use? Which presses do you use?
That arm press.
Arm.
And so very light.
But it's the tree press, right? The little one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that's why we be careful so we don't crush too much to not extract any vegetal. It depends to different region because Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot can be Pinot Noir. You can do it. You can go very hard on it. It's not a problem. It's a very refined. For us, we have to be careful because the varietal aromatic of the Cabernet already have that tendencies of giving vegetal aromatic. If you had the bad vegetal on above it, so every recipe it's to a different region. This is something we have to say, which is very important.
I'm glad you said this because I would have hooked in right now. Because when I asked you about vinification, said nothing. I thought, okay, if you work with so many different varieties,
exactly, yeah,
that can be nothing can be dangerous.
Yeah. But it's different because for us we do 3 harvests. Mm-hmm. We harvest because we have 9 grapes on 1.5 hectares, almost 2 now.
Do you make like a field blend? You put them all together, or you separate and ferment everything extra?
We harvest. There's a field blend of the 4 whites, which is slightly separated. We harvest 4 whites at the same time because it's very small, so we cannot do little cuvée. And this is something also we have to understand. And I think all sommelier needs to fight again that, not because you're doing 300 bottles of one cuvée on a domain, it's a great wine. Because now, with the Instagram and things like that, there's only 300 bottles on the planet for that wine. And
unicorn.
Exactly. So this is one thing. To do a good wine in very small quantity, it's very tough. To do in big quantity, it's very tough also. It's a industrial miracle to do something like that. The best, it's human size, but in between, because you need to have a certain amount of like a cuve of 20 hectares. So the 3,500 liters or 4,000 liters is way better than 600 liters. So that's definitely, and you have more. It's more precise. It's more regular. And this is something we have to say, and we always have to defend, because not because it's produced by 300 bottles every year, it's a great wine, even if the whole planet wants to have it. So that was a little thing. And so, to do the Galouchey, so you have the 4 whites, which is harvest together. And after that, you have the Merlot, which is ready at least 2.5 weeks before all the other grapes. Because, the Merlot can reach high alcohol very quickly. In French, we say il peut décrocher. It can unhook very easily from the vineyard. And so you do the vinification and you taste the Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, and it's absolutely not ripe yet. So that's why we do 3 harvests in a little bit less than 2 hectares. So it's a whole different thing than having like a monocepage or things like that. So the reflection are all different in all different regions.
So you harvest for at least a month then?
It's 1 or 2 days.
But
among 1 month. So because it's very small, so it would have like 100 hectares. Yes, it's a whole month of harvesting for sure. But if you have 70 hectares of Merlot, you have to be careful, or having a lot of harvester with you, because it can go very fast. You can take 1 degree of alcohol in 1.5 days. no problem. So, because this year it was like almost 40 degrees in the vineyard, so it can goes when you're at the edge, it can goes very fast. And so you do three different because the Cabernet, the Carmenère, and the Petit Verdot, it's so small that we harvest together. So at the end, in the blend, so you have around like 5-6% of white wine. You have mostly Merlot, 60%, Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, 10 to 15% both, and the rest after that. So that's why it's a different approach also, always in the philosophy. The white wine that we planted at the beginning, it was because of the wife of one of my two partner was not drinking any red. So we wanted to do a white for her. But at the end, we noticed that doing some tests and putting the white in the red, it was bringing some lift, some freshness, and some buvability. So something that make it more beverages. So
this is what you brought your experience. I know you love the wines from the Rhone Valley.
Yep.
Is this what you kind of gave it a twist there?
The history would have been nice if I would have said yes to you. But honestly, it's because you're in your cellar, you taste, the white, it's great. We have so little, why we don't, what we can do. And you said maybe the reflex of thinking about it is maybe because I know that it's made over there. And one day I said, okay, I'm going to try it. And I was all alone in my corner. I said, maybe we can. So after that, I brought some sample by blind taste to everyone. I said, what do you think about that? That's good. It's a bit more fresh. And okay. Now it started like that.
So what white varieties you have in there?
We have Sauvignon Blanc, Sauvignon Gris, Muscadelle, and Semillon.
Okay, good.
So, and in the future, if you have some people that love the wine that we will present over there, so we are. I don't know if you know Nicolas Gonin. He's the vice president of the Sauvegarde of all disappeared variety grapes in France, with Michel Grisard in Savoie, and he sent me the cadastral information of Béchac et Caillot, our city, from 1947, and there was more than 25 grapes on the appellation. Saint-Macaire, Pinot Noir, Gros Mansang, and all these absolutely phenomenal grape that I think will be great. So that's why we have some right of plantation. So that's going to be maybe... that's going to be something in the future. It's not started yet because we started last year with our Blanc de Noir. So we have 2 demi-muits of Blanc de Noir of Merlot, which is finished fermenting now, and we're going to see after 18 months, maybe 24 months.
Listening to you, you're going to harvest soon for an entire month.
Yeah, we'll see. but that could be very interesting to bring all these to bring all these other grapes, because I think the problem when you that's one of the big problem today in Burgundy, in Bordeaux, in the classified growth, in Côte Rôtie. It's the wine today are so expensive that the risk you want as a winemaker, the risk you want to do so experimentation is very limited. Who will make some Bâtard Montrachet with 10 days of skin contact today?
None,
because you're selling your bottle for 250 euros. So nobody wants to take any risk for that. And this is one of the advantages we have today. Petrus will never try to do a Blanc de Noir because they can sell their bottle for 2,000 euros, of course, and I understand them. But for us, it doesn't make a huge difference. So that's why we're able to taste. And for me, I really... Since the beginning, when we started, I don't want the series to use big name to promote the wine, but that's something that happened like during the vintage 2012 that was in aging. When I was at the Bristol, we did a winemaker's dinner with Nadi Foucault, which is he rarely go out of his house, and he accepted to come to the Bristol. And
talking about expensive now, huh?
Pardon me?
Talking about expensive right now.
When you get direct, it's not very expensive, but it's all the crazy things after that it's becoming expensive. But and I brought my wine because at the beginning, we had like modest terroir, 15,000 euro Bordeaux Gérinique. We say, okay, we're gonna prevent the fruit. We're gonna do a very light wine and things like that. So it was interesting, but it didn't have the thing we have today. And when I served my wine to Nadi, he said, it's not vegetal. It's perfectly ripe. you have acidity, you have freshness. The only thing that missed your wine, it's longer aging. You know, Les Bourgs, it's a little bit low, but Les Pouilleurs, it's 36 months of oak aging. I don't know with the new direction. I don't know where it will go, but during that period, it was 36 months of oak aging on Cabernet Franc. Okay, so we started to do like 16, 18 months. Okay, and we tried on one barrel in 2013 some 30 months of oak aging. So we started to do 14. We did some trying of it, and I said, "Oh, that's very interesting." I think today in barrel, 24 months, it's perfect. You know, for us, we are bottling this week the 2018, and it's going to be released in March 2018, and we're in 2021 for a Bordeaux generic. You know, it takes some times. It needs, you know, you need to have the economical support to do it. But long aging, not on Pinot Noir because it's an oxidative grape. We have reductive grapes, so that's a different thing. It can support long aging, so that's why I bought a big foudre in Alsace of almost 3,000 liter, and it's arriving now in Bordeaux, and I'm going to do a Grand Reserva of 48 months in an old foudre of Pinot Noir from Alsace. Mm-hmm. And you know, and I really believe, because today, you know, more oak for a little quantity of wine, after 24 months, it starts to dry the tannin. So I think there in a barrel, there's no need to go further than this. Mm-hmm. But in big, I think 48 months will be amazing.
That supports it.
But you're from Austria, so you know all these big content, and you know how benefits, exactly how it brings benefits to wine. And I think, you know, not a lot of people are taking enough risk of doing these kind of wine. Can you imagine Chateau Latour to do 48 months in big old oak? That's gonna be a Vega Sicilia plus 10. But you know, it's a different approach. But the risk of taking some risk, it's hard today with all the economical problem.
Well, that's why I see the wine world slowly changing, and I think COVID-19 brings it even more out.
Yeah,
I mean, exactly. I mean, listen. Obviously, with the negative impacts of COVID,
of course, yeah.
But I think, as from the drinker and how curious people are right now, and especially looking into the young generation, they look into alternatives by default, A, and secondly, they look for different flavors. They look for different experiences.
Exactly,
and that's why they look also funky wines, which for us often smell like kombucha. They find that interesting, but this is purely because they're bored.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Again,
and who would have think, like, when we were seeing each other for the first time, like a little bit more than 10 years, that everyone were going to drink some skin contact white from whatever. Nobody was thinking about that, you know. and things go even 10 times faster these days. So that's why it's hard for older guy like you and me to follow up with the young kid like Katja, but you know, yeah. But we're trying over there, so we try to train. So but, but no, it is what it is, and you know, and I think if you're losing the interest of experimentation, either because of lack of motivation or lack of economy or whatever, I think it's boring. So that I don't know, and I encourage so much people to do some tests, but the only thing we have to say, you can do some test, but the test that doesn't succeed, don't take your client for a guinea pig to try it. You know, under the what's the word in English? Sorry, I'm losing my word. The pretext of being a little bit weird. You know, don't wait until it's successful.
Yeah,
so that's why taking some risk. You're taking some risks, so it can be great, but it can be bad. So, you know.
So if a young consumer, you know, one of these people like you described before 10 years ago, who looked for this kind of different, interesting style of wines, which were a little bit outside of the box. So not the wines, you know, the Latours, the Margots, what the parents drank. Mm-hmm. Because as a young person, you want to, you know, upset your parents a little bit and challenge them.
Exactly.
By default. So a person like that, what should that person in a 1-2 sentence line know about Galouchey? I know this is a very difficult question for you to discuss.
The only thing I would say, it's a bump in the past, because the wines we are making, it was the wine that was made like 70 years ago. That's it. Mm-hmm. I don't want to. I didn't invent anything. I didn't. You know, there was some food in Bordeaux back then. There was, you know, but it's just stainless steel arrived, new oak arrived, and all this thing. Everything it's a vogue, you know. And the only thing it's a bump in the past, but except that the only difference it's back then they used to do maybe longer maceration, because what we need to understand in the Bordeaux never made better wine between 1900 and 1947, okay, 61, 59, but that period was really the best wine. There was not all the chemical part, first of all, and they were able to sell their wine. It was not the crisis that we had after, but they were able to sell it. They were not like crazy rich, but they were able to do the wines they wanted to do honestly. But there was not as much market as today. So, you know, when you have Chateau Margaux 110 hectares, and you don't have, well, you had the American back then, but you didn't have the Japanese, you didn't have the Russian, you didn't have the Indian, you didn't have all these. So that's a pretty amount of wine. And back then it was different in Bordeaux. You know, I was reading something about the wines back then, and when you were doing it, it was almost, we didn't have all the knowledge that we had today. But every year it was the same recipe. So that's why the notion of good and bad vintage today doesn't exist anymore. For me, it doesn't exist anymore.
Nope.
You have some wine. Now we have
It's
to
cooked.
Yeah, we have to talk about wine with great potential of aging, wines ready to drink a little bit earlier in terms of potential of aging. But back then it was different. You know, you had all the different vintage as we have today with good, bad weather and things like that. But the recipe was always the same. Fermentation, almost. You had a lot of whole clusters in these wine, which is already a different thing, and it was always almost 30 days of maceration, because every single vintage we were thinking of doing a great vintage, but you had only one great vintage every decade. So when you taste some 29 today or 45 blind taste, you say, well, I think it's 12-year-old, I think it's 15-year-old, because they're made for it. And you know, never forget that when they were vinifying the 29, they were still selling the 1890 cellar.
But can you imagine drinking these wines 10 or 15 years after the harvest?
Undrinkable.
Painful.
Exactly.
Painful.
So
I mean, it's like drinking nails.
And that's why today the fact of doing a wine ready to drink earlier, sometimes it's bad seen by people, mostly the old generation of wine drinkers, because a wine have to be made to be aged. If it aged, it's a great wine. If it's a wine that drink like 2018 now, it's a very normal wine. But that's not true. It's just the time change. As I said, when they were vinifying the 29, they were still selling the 1890 or something like that. So it was not the same economical back then. So they had to do it like that, because you know, I was talking about Camille Lois in the Jura. He's the one that sells his estates to Stéphane Tissot, La Tour de Curon. That was the 4 hectares of Camille Lois. I went to see him, like, I think it was 2 years ago, 95-year-old in the cellar. His battery and his everything was not working. So it was like, and his last vintage was in 1990, just to give you an idea. And I talked for 4 hours with them, and it was absolutely phenomenal. They said, Marco, you know, a lot of people sometimes they don't understand our wine today, but they were spending minimum 15, 20 years in big old oak, because the old oak was not something to make the wine. It was something to preserve the wine.
Preserve to container.
Because when I vinified the 1990, I was starting to sell the 78, and it needed to stay in the barrel to keep some freshness.
Yeah, but again, no bank would finance this today. None.
No, it's economically talking, it's impossible.
Yeah.
The law were different, because in France, you know, all the wines you have in your cellar, every year you pay taxes on it. That was not the case like 40 years ago. It's a whole different thing. So that's why the fact of we are doing wine more accessible in the youth, doesn't have to be seen as a bad thing, or like we do some very easy. It can be amazingly great authentic wine without necessarily the potential of aging for 100 years. Yeah. So, you know, so this is why, just to answer your question, this is what we are doing at Galouchey, because at the beginning it was something for friends. We wanted to do the wines that we wanted to drink. And finally, it had a great potential. Great. I don't know. I opened a Magnum of 2007, our first vintage the other day, and it was still very fresh, no oxidation, nothing. So that's why it made me think that it have a potential of aging. But it's so good on the youth, so it able to do both. Maybe it won't age for 100 year.
Yeah. Well,
So it's not a big.
if you have 3 of these, I called it this so little hidden gems, what producers would you recommend in Bordeaux area?
In Bordeaux,
Offside, you know, would you respect?
For me, Jogaret, it's definitely, you guys know the Jogaret. He's a guy, he's the last Gaulois in the Médoc, right between Saint-Julien and one vintage on the two. They declassify in Vin France because they call this one no atypique. So what it mean, you know, I don't know what it means, but the wine is absolutely phenomenal. And this is still the wine we used to make. I think it didn't change his barrel since at least 50 years, you know. It's still the same one since forever. So it's just the content, it just patine the wine. It's not, for me, this is the greatest Cabernet Sauvignon of Bordeaux, for sure. And I would say I really love the job that the young Japanese is doing, Uchida. I don't know if you taste the wine. I think he's doing a great job. Le Clos des Moussis, they're doing an amazing job with easy approach wine. We're not talking about now like wine at 150.
No.
25, maybe $25, $28 a wine, and the wines are brilliant, you know. And as I'm coming back to what I was say, it's useless to intellectualize the wine. Wine, it's basically a peasant product, and have to say like that. When you go in the winemakers, for the people that maybe didn't have the chance of going see some winemakers, when you go see a winemakers, they don't talk for 3 hours about the aromatic in the wine or things like that. They give you 3 words. No, it's good, not good. It's red, it's white, and that's it. So just bring the wine as is simple approach, which is a beverage.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much. This is super helpful.
Thank you.
Again, I want to be respectful to your time.
Oh, it's
great seeing you as always. Hopefully we see each other once.
So it's good.
Yeah.
So where are you gonna do that tasting? It's a Zoom. Okay,
Zoom, yeah.
For your private client, for your.
No, we sent out. We advertised that, and people. We sent them the wines, and we do the tasting for them.
Good. It's client. It's sommelier.
Yeah.
All type
No,
of,
it's more like clients, mainly of Le Bernardin and the wine bar.
Okay, cool.
So.
Well, say hello to your friend, and next time I'll bring some bottle, and we'll talk directly over there.
Yeah, I'm gonna see you in Paris eventually.
I hope so very soon, my friend.
Yeah, cool.
Okay,
thank you so much.
Thank you. That was great.
Thank you so much.
That was
Likewise.
great to see your faces.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, ciao.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Kiss you.